restarting, reconnecting.
It can't have anything to do with the crazy
Okay.
earbuds. Okay, what? Are we live?
It just popped in.
Okay.
I'm hoping it says live.
Yep. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, we're coming back. Pammy can hear me. Yay.
Yay. Okay, we're good to go, I think.
Well, if there wasn't something crazy on our day back, it wouldn't be us, guys.
I don't understand this. I really don't.
It's okay, Doc. It's us. We like to have some drama.
Oh, I know what. I
Okay.
forgot my foil hat.
Well, you can't forget your foil hat, my love.
Sorry.
You have to keep the foil hat on. Okay?
Okay.
Let's see. Now, gotta make sure the pictures, come on. I did the button. It's not moving.
There he is.
Did it come on?
Yeah, it moved to the next one.
Okay. But they can't see me.
Jesus. Hey, there's something else here. Okay. Now hold on. Hold on. Let me go to the control room and
Okay. Well,
let you in
everybody,
again. Yeah,
see this is the fun of having a YouTube channel. And if everything went correctly, you guys know it's not us. So we brought some drama. We have some fun. I hope everybody finds their way back because we got a good one for you. I do want to tell everybody how much we really missed you guys on Thursday. You know, we don't have one show and it's
hey,
sad.
there you are.
And there I am.
You.
So let's get started. I hope you all had fun over with Dr. Rachel and therapist. I caught just the tail end. It looks like they're going to have lots of fun over there. And I can't wait till I can be on there with you guys and having some fun and playing the games. Okay, you guys, here we go. Greetings to all of our truth seekers, trial junkies, and justice warriors. I'm Z, the storyteller, in the wilderness of injustice, with my ride or die doc riding shotgun as we navigate the darkness where the predators hunt and the system fails. We're ready to illuminate the forgotten stories society would like us to leave buried. And the path grows bumpy as we lead you through another section of this nightmare they call the justice system. Tonight, we're not just going to be talking about a cold case, we're going to talk about how history doesn't just repeat, it echoes. And those echoes, they're screaming louder than ever. Okay? Now, we're going to start by, I'm going to set the stage for you here, Doc. I want you to
Okay.
picture this.
All right.
It's October 1924. The roaring 20s are in full swing. Jazz is playing, prohibition is failing, and in New York, Rochelle, New York, there is a man named Leonard Kip Rhinelander. He's heir to one of the wealthiest real estate fortunes in America, second only to the Astors. He's just married the love of his life, Alice Beatrice Jones, and she is a beauty. Now, this might sound like a fairy tale, right?
Kinda
Wrong,
does.
wrong. Because you see, Alice's father was of mixed race. And in 1920 America, that made their marriage a scandal that would grip the nation for years and have echoes. But before we dive into Alice and Leonard's story, we need to understand the world they lived in. Because you guys, 1924 wasn't just any year. It was a year when America's racism was codified into law, enforced with violence, defended by science. The year 1924. What was the world like? Well, Alice and Leonard had married in October 14th of 1924, but America was at the height of what we now recognize as one of the most racist periods in our nation's history. This wasn't ancient history. This was modern America, the roaring 20s, the jazz age, flappers, prohibition. And underneath all that glitter, a carefully constructed system of racial apartheid, eugenics, and exclusion for Black Americans in 1924. If you were Black in America, especially in the South, your entire life was controlled by the Jim Crow laws that had been in place since the 1870s. You couldn't just vote. Literacy tests and poll taxes reduced Black voter registration to 3% in the South, you guys. You couldn't use white water fountains, restrooms, or other public facilities. You couldn't eat at white restaurants, stay at white hotels, or sit in the white section of buses. Lady Chatterley's Lover was one of the books of the age, and trust me, it was scandalous. And we're gonna come back to that because there were some other scandalous things going on. You couldn't shake hands with a white man. It implied social equality. You couldn't marry a white person in 29 states. So if Alice and Leonard had married in one of the 29 states that outlawed interracial marriage at the time, just the presentation of her birth certificate doc, a judge would have immediately invalidated their union.
So again, they were married in one of the states that it was
Allowed it.
illegal. Oh,
No, it
allowed it.
allowed
Okay.
it
Okay.
because they were in New York. So interracial marriage was legal. There's a picture there that's one of the, subway cars, well, not subway, it was one of the cars they use down in, New Orleans, and it shows where the streetcars where the colored people could sit. See,
That's disgusting.
that was a thing. That was Jim Crow, you
Ugh.
know? And just 5 years before Alice's wedding, there was a lot of violence. In 1919, the Red Summer. What was the Red Summer? 77 Black people were lynched in 1 year. 14 were publicly burned, 11 were burned alive. Race riots erupted in 26 American cities. Now, you might think, well, it was the Black people. No, you guys. For Asian Americans in 1924, on May 26, 1924, just months before Alice and Leonard's October wedding, Congress passed the Immigration Act of 1924. President Calvin Coolidge signed it into law saying, America must remain American. This law completely banned all immigration from Asia, created the Asia, Asiatic barred zone. If you were born anywhere from Afghanistan to the Pacific, you could not enter the United States. Existing Asian Americans could not become naturalized citizens. They couldn't own land in many states and couldn't bring family members from Asia. Sound familiar, anybody? For
Hmm.
Native Americans in 1924, just weeks after banning the Asian immigration, Congress passed the Indian Citizenship Act on June 2nd, 1924. Now, this granted citizenship to Native Americans, yet many states still prevented them from voting until 1948. And why? Blood quantum. Rules were fully enforced. Now, what's blood quantum? You had to prove you were enough of an Indian. You had to have Indian blood to a certain degree or lose treaty rights, and tribal memberships. Now, this wasn't something that the natives and indigenous people started. This was the governments that started this. Boarding schools were still operating under the motto, kill the Indian, save the man. Remember, the blood quantum is a white government thing that they placed on the tribes. And we're going to delve into this deeper. I have some feelers out. I'd like to talk to a couple of very important chairmen and one of the secretaries on one of the tribes because I want to get some more information on this for you all. But also for Mexican Americans in 1924, what about them? They were exempt from immigration quotas. Got that? They were exempt. Now, it wasn't because they were welcomed. It was because the farmers needed exploitive labor. They faced segregated schools, lower wages, and a constant threat of deportation. Even if born in the US, does this sound familiar? The eugenics movement in 1924 was considered a legitimate science. The Immigration Act was written by eugenicists who believed in racial hierarchies. This is the exact science that would influence Nazi Germany's racial laws. So when Alice married Leonard in October of 1924, she was violating one of the most fundamental rules of this Jim Crow eugenics obsessed America. Don't cross the color line in love or marriage. Think about that. But now let's ask, who were Leonard and Alice? Well, Leonard was 21 years old, heir to nearly $100 million, which today would be about 1.8 billion. Okay. Part of one of New York's oldest dynasties, the Rhinelanders arrived in America in 1686, members of the Gilded Age elite, the 400 more exclusive than the social register. What about Alice? She was a working class woman from New Rochelle. Her parents were English immigrants who arrived in 1891. Her father worked as a cab driver. Her mother worked in domestic service. They'd built a modest life. They owned some properties and lived in a small home. And here's what made headlines. Her father, George, was colored, mixed race. Alice's mixed heritage. Alice's father, George, had one grandfather from a British colony, India or the West Indies, but the family had no connection to Africa, slavery, or Black America experiences. In England, his wife even testified George's skin color was irrelevant. He was simply treated as another servant in the house. The family lived actually as white people in America. They integrated into the white neighborhoods. Alice genuinely didn't consider herself Black. America's racial absurdity.
Yeah, well,
So,
don't know. She shouldn't have. I mean,
yeah,
there was nothing connecting at all.
right. So New York had no legal racial definitions at the
Mm.
time, you guys. That this is where the wild inconsistencies come from. Alice's family was classified as white in some census that were taken at the time, and as Black or mulatto in others. Her sisters were classified differently depending on whom they married. Now, back then, the Supreme Court, there were some different rulings in Ozawa, 1922, and Thine, 1923, that revealed the inconsistencies of racial classifications nationwide. The first ruling that whiteness meant Caucasian race, regardless of skin color, then immediately reversing their course to say a Caucasian man wasn't white based on appearance. So that's why there was so much confusion at the time. But let's get to this courtroom battle for Alice and Kip. His name was Leonard, but he went by Kip. Alice was classified as a white woman on her marriage certificate. Now, if her birth certificate had said the same, her and Kip would have lived peacefully. But instead, Leonard's lawyer portrayed him as a mentally deficient and manipulated by Alice's seduction, reading nearly 100 of her love letters that uh, they wrote to each other. And that's why I was talking about Lady Chatterley. Oh,
Hmm.
some of these love letters, you guys. Woohoo! They were spicy. They were in love. And that's cool. But and all of this was because they decided they were going to try and annul this marriage. And so the love story of Alice and Leonard. Let's get there. Okay. Alice and Leonard met in 1929, 21. Whoops. And at the time, he was attending the Orchard School in Stamford, Connecticut. It was an inpatient clinic. He was seeking treatment because he was extremely shy and he stuttered. So he actually tried to date her sister first, but Alice's father said, I don't think it's a good idea. And so then he started up with dating Alice, and they fell head over heels. They had a real relationship, 3 years, you guys, of a courtship. He visited her family home. He knew her parents. One of her sisters actually had married a black man. The family actually kind of disowned her for a couple of years until she had a baby that looked Caucasian.
Hmm.
Isn't that the irony? And he socialized with this brother-in-law. So, but there were letters and promises, and Leonard knew her family, you guys. I'm trying to make that very clear. But let's start with his father, Philip. Let me tell you about Philip Rhinelander's calculated campaign. He was going to get rid of his son's happiness. Philip anticipated this relationship and spent years trying to end it, you guys. In February of 1922, he sent his son on a 2-year chaperone trip. Okay. They sent him to Bermuda, Washington, Havana, Panama, and California. It was a grand tour, and it was to put distance between Leonard and Alice. But it didn't work. In October of 1922, Philip tried again. He stuck Leonard in a private school in Arizona, another attempt to separate them. Now remember, they don't have cell phones, so there was no texting, but it was letters. Love letters continued to flow between Leonard and Alice throughout all this time. And I'm talking hundreds. The moment Leonard turned 21 in 1924 and gained access to his trust fund, he left school, went straight back to Alice. On October 14th, 1924, they married in secret. Their marriage certificate listed both of them as white. They rented an apartment, ordered some furniture, but moved in with her parents while setting up their household. Okay. And Leonard kept working at his family's real estate company, and he said nothing to his father and lived a double life for an entire month. But then the scandal broke. And Leonard initially, this is Leonard, initially stood by his wife. But the newspapers came out and said the bride of Rhinelander is colored. And for about 2 weeks, he held the line, and he even stood up in front of reporters that followed it home and said that this was his wife. He loved her. He was going to stand here. But Philip threatened to cut Leonard off. And you know what? Kip couldn't quite handle that. So Philip actually sent some lawyers to kind of go get Kip. He was going to help him out, get him away from all the publicity because they were being hounded, you guys. And they had already prepared this annulment. And when Kip left, he actually told Alice, "I'll be back for you." But when he got where he was going, they had the annulment papers ready. All he had to do was sign them. And as we know, Kip signed them. So on November 26th of 1924, it wasn't about love being impossible. This concerned the Rhinelander fortune and the belief that racial purity was more important than a young man's happiness or a young woman's dignity. Philip Rhinelander spent years trying to break them apart. And when his son married Alice, any way Philip used the one weapon he knew would work. Money talks, people.
Yeah,
Mm,
it sounds like that's exactly what it came down to. He was
You're
threatened to
yeah,
be cut off, and that won out.
exactly. And so as we can see, this scandal, it's not just about interracial marriage because 29 states at the time were actually banning it. This was about Rhinelander marrying a housemaid, wealth, protecting $100 million fortune. Because if they were to have children, that fortune could go into the wrong hands. It was about race. Eugenics movement was at its peak, wanting the racial mixing that would destroy white civilization. Sound familiar? Power, the Rhinelander family's social standing and bloodline. Leonard's father, Philip, took immediate action. Within 2 weeks, Leonard filed for the annulment, not divorce, because what they claimed was that Alice had deceived him about her race. He claimed he never knew she was colored until after they married. Now, isn't that funny? So in 1925, the trial became a media circus. They said this was like almost the O.J. Simpson case of the time.
Hmm.
Every major newspaper in the country covered it. Black
So,
newspapers followed it obsessively.
so obviously he met Dad.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, he
So,
because dad told him not to date the first daughter,
yeah.
and then he came back and decided to date Alice. Yeah. So he knew her father, he knew what he looked like.
Okay.
There's no surprise,
Yeah.
but the courtroom was packed with hundreds of spectators. There were, you know, blacks, whites, and the question, did Alice misrepresent herself as white and hide her true racial ancestry? Well, what were the stakes? Freedom for Leonard from a marriage his family deemed unacceptable. For Alice, it was her marriage, her reputation, and her dignity and her future. For America, who gets to define race? Who gets to police love? And who belongs where? Here's where it gets absolutely horrifying, Doc. Leonard's attorneys portrayed Alice using every racist stereotype in the book, calling her a vamp who seduced a naive young man, playing on all the sexualized stereotypes of Black women of the time. They painted Leonard as some kind of dupe because he stuttered. Wasn't stupid. His attorney, Isaac Mills, persisted in referring to him as mentally backward and painting him as the helpless victim of Alice's seduction. But Alice's attorney, who actually had mentored under Isaac Mills, fought back with a desperate and degrading strategy, you guys. If Alice couldn't hide her race, then Leonard must have known. So, what he proposed, the judge, the attorneys, the jury, the plaintiff, the defendant, and her mother, and this is where this picture comes from, Mrs. George Jones and the stenographer left the courtroom and entered the jury room. The defendant and Mrs. Jones then withdrew to the lavatory and after a short time again entered the jury room. The defendant, who was weeping, had on her underwear and a long coat. At Mr. Davis's direction, her attorney, she let down her jacket so that the upper portion of her body, as far down as the breast, was exposed. She then again, at Mr. Davis's direction, covered the upper part of her body and showed the jury her bare legs, up as far as her knees. Now, this picture was taken right before she did it. And because they weren't able to show this because they were in a room, this was what they put in the paper. And the defense effectively backed the Rhinelander side into asking the jury, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? So they reduced this woman to her skin color. They made her body into evidence. They humiliated her in the name of proving the obvious that Leonard knew precisely who he was marrying. Now, the stenographer made the remarks that, she was absolutely weeping. And this is what they did to her.
Well, you can see why. I mean, good
Yeah.
night.
I mean, can't imagine them doing that today. But after weeks of testimony, because it was an all white male jury deliberated for 2 days, they actually ruled in Alice's favor. So the annulment was denied. The marriage was upheld. But winning didn't mean Alice got her husband back. And I hate to tell her who'd want him. Leonard disappeared. He was eventually found in Nevada in 1929, living under the name Lou Russell, working as a woodcutter, hiding from the world. He got his divorce in Nevada in 1929, which New York didn't recognize. They eventually had to sign a separation agreement in 1930. Leonard paid Alice $32,500, which today would be around 575,000,
Mm.
plus 300 a month for the rest of her life. So about 5,600 today. Of course, there's nothing in there for, the cost of living. It was just that 300.
Hmm.
And in exchange, Alice gave up all claims to the Rhinelander estate. And the cruelest part, she agreed never to use the Rhinelander name publicly, never to lecture, never to write about her story. After Kip's father died, because Kip actually only lasted about 7 years, I think it was, and he died, with his father beside him of pneumonia. And even till that day, Alice was sad that he had passed and that they had kept them apart. Kip never married, neither did Alice. But his sister tried to stop making the payments. Alice took her to court. A couple of years later, she won. So go, Alice. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
She never told her story. She never remarried. She lived until 1989 at the age of 90, dying with $25,000 in her bank account. But this is where Alice got a little revenge, and I love it. On her gravestone, it says Alice J. Rhinelander. Even in death, she reclaimed what they tried to take from her. Yep,
The
she
name.
was. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I like that. But one of the things that they used to absolutely tear poor Alice apart was they used the word quadroon. Now, Doc, you need to understand something about that term. Because whoops, what did I
Went the
just
wrong
do?
way.
I went the wrong way. I've been known to do that before, peoples, and we all know it, so it's okay.
Yeah.
It just makes it more exciting, don't y'all think? Oh, we'll get to Brett, Ken. Don't you worry. I'm going to be talking about Mr. Brett because him's got some issues. But okay, let's see here. There we go. Oh, gotta get my. But yeah, I mean, you got to feel sorry for poor Alice. I mean, that poor girl, what they put her through. It made me ill. I wanted to smack him. But now we're telling her story. And that's what's important is that her story does get out because it needs to be told.
Well, she basically got crucified in the court of public opinion.
Yeah. And Kip didn't want to live without his daddy's money.
Yep.
But okay, quadroon. This is actually a term that they used, and it really started, I think, down around New Orleans when a person with one black grandparent and three white grandparents, so you're one quarter African descent. And there were other categories like mulatto. The first time they said that she actually got classified as mulatto at a job, she was in tears because she didn't identify herself that way. And that's one black parent, one white parent. Octoroon is one black great grandparent, one eighth African descent. So think about what this all means, you guys. We're talking about a system so obsessed with racial purity that it created mathematical fractions to define human worth,
Mm.
the one drop rule. And here's where it even gets more insidious with the one drop rule. In practice, if you even had one drop of black blood, one black ancestor anywhere in your family tree, you were considered black under the law in many states. Not white, not quadroon, not octoroon, just black. And being black meant you couldn't vote in many places, own property in certain areas. You couldn't marry white people, attend white schools, use white facilities, testify against white people in court in some jurisdictions. Think about that. One drop, one ancestor, one trace of African heritage. Apartheid fell on your shoulders. And this is what Alice faced. Her father had mixed ancestry that made her colored under the one drop rule, that made her unsuitable for a Rhinelander, that made her marriage a fraud in the eyes of Leonard's family and much of white society. Blood quantum, the same tool used against Native Americans now. Here's something you should make your blood boil. That same government that used the one drop rule to define Black Americans also used it to oppose Native Americans
Mm.
because the blood quantum ugh, tongue twister there, to determine who was considered Native American, you had to prove, and in some tribes you still do, to a specific percentage, often one quarter or more of Indian blood to be recognized by the federal government. So think about this evil genius of that observation. For Black Americans, one drop makes you Black, subject to discrimination. But for Native Americans, you must prove enough blood or lose your treaty rights, your land claims, and your tribal membership. It's the same racist tool, they just flip it. In
Hmm.
both cases, white people decide who belong where and who got what rights. What's the government's goal? To eliminate Native and Indigenous people's identity over time. Intermarriage with non-natives would dilute blood quantum. I mean, that's just science. Eventually making tribes disappear on paper, which would, in treaty obligations, open reservation lands for white settlement, eliminate federal trust responsibilities, destroy tribal sovereignty, and here's the cruelest part. Some tribes were forced to adopt blood quantum rules to determine enrollment, dividing families, creating internal hierarchies. It's still going on today. There are tribes that disenroll people because their blood quantum isn't right.
Yep.
Making tribal
Wow.
members police each other's ancestry. One child might be enrolled, their sibling might not. Same parents, same heritage, different fractions. Why this matters for Alice's story when newspapers called Alice a quadroon? They weren't just describing her appearance, they were invoking an entire system of racial classification designed to determine people's worth by percentages, police interracial relationships, and protect white purity, justify segregation and discrimination, maintain economic and social hierarchy. Leonard's attorneys argued that Alice deceived him about having Negro blood. The term blood wasn't accidental. It treated race like a contaminant, something that could pollute the pure Rhinelander bloodline. Remember, he knew her family for over 3 years. He lived with them after they married. This is eugenics language. This is the language that would soon help justify the Holocaust. This is the language that says some humans are fractions of humans, and Alice was stripped in court, literally, examined like livestock, and reduced to percentages, was forced to prove that Leonard could see her blood by looking at her skin. I mean, let that sink in to what
So
she
we're
went
we're
through.
back to the days when black people were put on the sales block
Exactly.
and stripped. Uh,
Yes,
I mean, good grief.
exactly. And they're trying to tell us now, don't look at history. Slavery didn't happen. Yeah, it did. It was you're right, therapist, it was shameful. This was just blood should not matter. And for them on one hand, where it benefits them, then they do the blood quantum with the native and indigenous people, but with the black people, one drop. And as we learned from Professor McLeod the day when he was talking about, President Obama, he said the tribe, with the country that President Obama's father was from, they actually don't look at him as the first black president because his mother was white. So see, it happens in different countries.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that. So to them, he's not a black president. When are we gonna stop looking at something so silly? We're all part of the human race, people. But now we're going to transition. Doc, I know what you're thinking. Z, that's a tragic historical story. But what does it have to do with today, right?
Well, it'd be kind of nice to know.
Everything. It has everything to do with today because that same principles that allowed the Rhinelander family to put Alice on a trial for her race, the same eugenics based reasoning, the same visual categorization, the same degradation of human bodies to prove racial identity. You guys, it's happening right now. On our streets, in our workplaces, in our bathrooms, and even to those who serve this country. Let's talk about in 2025, Immigration and Custom Enforcement, good old ICE, has become the enforcement arm of the same racist ideology that put Alice on trial. And in September of 2025, here, Ken, this is for you. We've got our dear Supreme Court. And of that Supreme Court, we have lovely Mr. Kavanaugh. And they actually passed that ICE could use people's apparent race or authenticity, the fact that they speak English with an accent or speak Spanish, their presence at a particular location like farms or pickup sites for day laborers, the type of work they do to decide who to stop and who to detain. Yeah. Thanks, Brett.
Hmm.
You little Irish. N Oh, okay, I'm gonna be good. I hope he's not Black Irish, because that is a thing, you guys. Irish shaming, but we might need to check into that. Okay, we would hate for that to happen. But let's Justice Sonia Sotomayor, I'm not saying her name right, and my tongue's not working tonight, guys. But Justice Sonia, who's awesome, she dissented and she warned that millions of people will now have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work a low wage job. Does this sound familiar?
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm sure she probably fears for her grandchildren or children. Think about that.
I'm sure she does.
In other families, it's the same principle as the Rhinelander trial. Your appearance, your language, your work, your location determine whether you have rights. The data they won't collect. Here's something that should enrage you. ICE has been lying about collecting racial data. The Black Alliance for Just Immigration obtained records proving that ICE has been collecting racial data while claiming they don't, classifying Black immigrants as white, refusing to publish data about who they actually are targeting and why. Because if they publish the data, it would prove what we already know. This is racial profiling, plain and simple. In 2022, 82% of those deported were from a majority of Black countries. And that's probably an underestimate because it doesn't account for Black immigrants deported to countries that aren't majority Black. The technology of discrimination, even the technology is racist. The CBP One app, the app that immigrants must use to schedule their asylum appointments, use facial recognition that often fails to recognize Black faces. So if Black immigrants can't register, they can't book appointments. If they can't book appointments, they stay on the other side of the border. So it's digital segregation.
Mhm.
But remember I talked about bathrooms? History repeats. Remember how Alice was forced to strip in court? How did her body become evidence? How did male authority figures violate her dignity to categorize her race? Here's one for you. September 4th of 2024, New York, Cato, New York. Masked men, ICE agents in tactical gear raided the nutritional bar confectioner's factory. Body cam footage, it's out there, just released in court filings, shows what happened. Agents kicked down the woman's bathroom door. They forced a stall open while a woman was using the restroom. And and as they go in, you guys, in the footage, the one guy goes, "Females, females, females." And then they order her, "Pull up your pants and come out of the bathroom. Pull up your pants." Yeah, that's not degrading, is it? They
Not at
detain
all.
they detained 57 workers. They questioned them without allowing access to lawyers. At least 21 were deported and separated from their families, including 3 children under the age of 2. At least one person under age 2, and one of them did have a valid work permit, but was deported anyway. The warrant they had, it only allowed them to review employee documents. It did not give them the authority to search for, detain, or arrest anybody. A federal judge ruled that the agents violated the Fourth Amendment. But damage was done. Families are separated. People are deported. Women are violated in bathrooms. The same dehumanization, the same reduction of people to their perceived race, the same invasion of bodies. And the irony, targeting Native Americans? Here's where it gets obscene, Doc. Some of you guys might recognize her. This is uh, Elise Mills. I think I said her name right. Let's hope I did. But we know me, and I may not have, because that does happen occasionally.
Yeah, yeah, once in a while.
Just once in a while. I know. What can I
We
say?
don't speak these things.
Thanks, Doc. I appreciate that. It's Elaine Mills. I went and double checked because Elaine is awesome. She was actually the actress that was on Northern Exposure. She played the nurse for the doctor,
Oh,
and
cool.
I loved her. She was so funny. She was actually harassed and held by ICE, and they lied about it, saying that she was in a car when she was walking. She was with relatives. When she showed her native ID to her tribe, they laughed at her and told her, well, that looked made up. She told them to call the number because all of the tribes are telling their members, make sure you have your native ID on you. At least 15 Navajo Nation citizens have been questioned or detained by ICE. 3 citizens of the Sistan Wapata '08, and I know I butchered that, and I apologize to all of you, were detained even after showing their tribal ID cards. A native Alaskan was pulled over for expired tags, harassed and asked about immigration status. A Mescalero Apache member was confronted and asked for ID in Spanish first, even though they spoke English. You know,
Yep.
and I mean, I feel so bad for Elaine because told her it looked fake. I mean, the tribes are actually scrambling to provide IDs to their members, waiving fees for tribal ID cards, teaching their citizens how to respond if stopped, reimbursing passport costs, begging the federal government to train the ICE agents to recognize tribal IDs. Let that sink in. But here's a little side note. When Christy, the puppy killer gnome, was the governor of South Dakota, at one time, 9 of the reservations would not allow her on because of how she treated natives and some of the issues that she started with them and some of the things she said. So do you think she cares about the native and indigenous people and that her people are actually trained to handle this? Nah, not the puppy killer. So the people who were here first, whose land was stolen, who were who have been denied citizenship until 1924, who were subject to genocide, forced removal, boarding schools, broken treaties, now have to carry multiple forms of ID to prove they're American enough on their ancestral lands. Yeah. It just really the irony. Now, some of the lawyers in going on in the administration, they have cited the 1884 Supreme Court case Elk versus Wilkins that denied Native Americans birthright citizenship to argue against birthright citizenship for others. So they're using historical oppression of Native people to justify the current oppression of immigrants. Yeah, they're going back to try that, because other things aren't working. Now, this young lady was a native from a tribe. I think it was the Pima tribe. I could be wrong, so we're not going to go there. But she was actually at the jail. It was a traffic crime, and she was serving. I think it was a 30-day sentence or something. And she was about ready to get released in Iowa. And her mother went to make arrangements to pick her up. And they told her, "Oh, well, she has an ice hold." And her mother's like, "What?" Well, yeah, she's gonna be deported. They literally had her in the jumpsuit to be deported. She's
Jeez.
native.
Good grief.
She's an indigenous woman. So her mother got on Facebook and got the word out, and that woman sat outside that jail that entire night to make sure someone did not come in and get her daughter and deport her. Katrina, that would be a good where are you going to deport Native individuals? I don't know because they belong here. Another
Yeah, but
thing
if
to
all
cons
if all is going the way that it seems to be going, the longer they keep them in the system and move them around, the more
yeah,
money they make.
exactly. Yeah, and they accidentally lose people.
Yeah.
They're not keeping the records. And these are things that we have to be thinking about, you guys. They're deporting people to countries they don't belong to, they don't speak the language. They have taken some of the people from Latin America and deported them to African countries. How are they going to get back to their country? See, they don't care. But now I'm going to tell you another story that's going to make this all come together. This is Bruna and her son. And Bruna Ferreira, she was actually, let me tell you her story. And this really goes right with the Rhinelander playbook, you guys, because it uses power and government authority to destroy a woman of color who became inconvenient to a wealthy family. And it's alive and well in 2025. And before you think that this is just another immigration story, I need you to understand something. We haven't come as far from 1924 as we'd like to believe. The Rhinelander connection 101 years ago. Alice Beatrice Jones stood at trial for the crime of being loved by a wealthy white man. When his family found out she might have black ancestry, they told him to annul the marriage. And the message was clear. A woman of color wasn't worthy of being part of a prominent white family. Love didn't matter. What mattered was maintaining that racial purity. And this Bruna's story repeats itself. So let's talk about Bruna's story. Bruna was arrested, and let's fast forward because she was a Brazilian woman who came to this country at the age of 6. Okay. She built a life here. She fell in love with Michael Levitt at a nightclub. They got engaged and they had a child she was so close to the Levitt family. You got it right. Carol Levitt was going to be her sister-in-law. That Michael's younger sister Carol was chosen as the godmother to their son. She chose Carol over her very own sister. So think about what that means. Bruna trusted Carol Levitt more than her own blood. And what did that trust get her? The betrayal. On November 12th of 2024, Bruna was surrounded by unmarked vehicles. Now, nobody knew where Bruna was living at the time except her ex, which would have been Carol's brother. The federal agents, they already knew what her name was, because when they told her to get down and they called her by her name because they knew who she was. They had barricaded her in her driveway. She was on her way to get her 11-year-old son from school 33 miles away. There was no warrant, just masks, badges, and an arrest. She was shuffled like cargo through Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Philadelphia, finally to a for-profit detention center in Louisiana, 1,500 miles away from her child. 26 days without her phone, 26 days unable to speak to her son, 26 days of her 11-year-old boy waiting for a mother who never came. Think about that. This was her and Michael Levitt when they had their child. Now, during those 26 days, what was happening at the White House? Well, the administration, with Carol Levitt as its spokesman, was calling Bruna a criminal, an illegal alien from Brazil. They were spreading the lie that she wasn't involved in her son's life, that she wasn't a present mother, that she was dangerous, and it was all lies. Every single word of it. Are we surprised? No.
Nope, not at all.
And the thing was, she was co-parenting with Michael Levitt at the time. They had shared custody. Now, the court documents show that Bruna and Michael actually had shared a home. But in 2014, a news article about Michael was he won $1 million in fantasy football quotes him as calling Bruna his fiance and discussing their life together, their 8-month-old son, and their condo. He said he'd spread some of the money, taking her on a trip to the West Coast as recently as the spring of 2024. Bruna was approving her son's visit to a White House. So in the spring of 2024, she was approving for her son to go to the White House Easter egg hunt. And they're saying she was part of his life? Yeah. She moved heaven and earth to make sure her boy could attend Carolyn's wedding in January. She was driving him to school 4 or 5 days a week, bringing him to softball games where Carolyn herself was present. But now the White House claims she was never close to the family, never involved in her son's upbringing. She's a criminal, a threat. The modern day stripping, just like Alice Rhinelander, was stripped in that courtroom to prove she wasn't white enough. Bruna is being publicly stripped of her character, her motherhood, and her dignity to prove she isn't American enough. The Levitt family has pushed her to self-deport. Of course, they're not going to let her take her son, but they keep telling her she needs to go. She needs to go back to Brazil, a country she left at the age of 6, a country where she barely speaks the language, a country she hasn't been her home for 27 years. They call it a vacation. Michael Levitt, the man who once called her his fiance, of course, this is who he's married to now. I guess he married his sister's twin. Yeah.
Hmm.
She's white. I hope he did a DNA test on her. She
Ah,
might
me
have one
too.
drop.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy. This is the man who threatened to have her deported during their breakup. Now he says he had no involvement in her arrest, but he was the only one that knew where she lived, and they came directly to her house with her name. You're not going to tell me that he did not have something to do with her being deported or attempted to deport. Of course, the judge has gotten her out, but she's still fighting her case. And this needs to be spread. You guys need to share this because the question that haunts me is even if he didn't make this call, let's say he didn't, is he fighting to stop it? This is the mother of his child. And I hate to tell him, according to 1924, his son has one drop.
Yep.
Is he protecting the mother of his child? Or is he standing by his sister as she uses her platform to destroy Bruna? The godmother silenced and Carolyn Lovett. The woman Bruna trusted enough to be her son's godmother. Can you imagine? The woman Bruna once looked up to as someone who rose to power against the odds. Not a word of defense, not a moment of humanity from these people. Just the cold, calculated repetition of the administration's talking points about criminal, illegal aliens. At the same time, her own nephew's mother sits at that time, right before this, in a detention center wearing a GPS monitor, unable to even see her child because his father won't bring him to her. Bruna said in her interview she gave recently on CNN, you're a mother now, and you should know how it would feel if you were in my shoes. How would you feel if someday they did this to you? And of course, and Bruna's a beautiful woman. She's a very smart young lady. And of course, we know that this child, he's of mixed heritage. Is he going to one day be considered lesser by the family because of this? And now we know Carolyn Levitt has announced that she's going to have a second child. Hmm. Wow. You're willing to take one mother's child away from her while you go around having more children. Interesting. But, I don't know how she looks at herself in the mirror and sees what she has become because the pattern of dehumanization, this is what racism looks like in 2025, you guys. It's not always burning crosses and the white hoods that we grew up thinking about. Sometimes it's the expensive suits, the press briefings. Sometimes it's using the power of the state to remove someone who has become inconvenient to you guys. Someone whose brown skin and Brazilian birth made her acceptable when she was young and Michael's girlfriend, but unacceptable when the family gained political power. Because let's be real, if Bruna was a criminal, illegal alien in 2024, she would have been charged as a criminal illegal alien. Because in 2014, when Michael won that $1 million and called her his fiance, she would have been a criminal illegal alien then. They shared custody of that child. So, and this criminal illegal alien was at softball games with Caroline a couple of springs ago, but nobody called her that then. Why? Because she wasn't politically valuable enough to destroy yet. And the child in the middle, Bruna's son, is 11 years old. A child who had lost his mom to the system that sees her as a disposable person. A child that one day is going to grow up and say, well, what about me? Because I have Brazilian blood. A child whose family drama is now national news, and a child who watches his aunt, his godmother, participate in the public destruction of his mother. What kind of message does that send? What type of trauma does it create? And Bruna said, he needs me now. He doesn't need me in 20 years because they told her that if she would self deport, she could try to come back in 20 years. Her son's 11. Every day that child spends separated from his mother is a day he's never going to get back because of the Levitt family. Every lie told about her is poison he'll have to carry. Every time he sees his aunt on TV defending this cruelty, it's another wound to his soul. The verdict, the immigration judge saw through the lies, and Bruno's attorney laid out the facts. She came here legally as a child, has zero criminal record, that she's been trying to get her green card since she was 18. What was the so-called arrest she had as a juvenile? At 16, it involved $8 and some pushing at a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. You heard me right. Some pushing in a parking lot and $8. The DHS lawyers said 2 words, "I stipulate." I agree, you're right. We've been lying. The judge set bond at $1,500, the absolute minimum allowed by law. The government waived the appeal because they knew this was persecution, not prosecution. Character assassination, not justice. And Carol Levitt's up there talking about what a criminal she was and how she has nothing to do with this child. That boy's gonna remember. Don't ever forget that.
It's absolutely amazing to me how people think they can get, well, how people actually get away with this kind of behavior
Yeah.
in the information age that I mean, you can fact check somebody in a matter of seconds on the
And
internet. It,
I th I think they hope people are too lazy to do it.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, Doc, you always tell me that people can't remember, 4 years ago.
No,
We've taken you to a story over 101 years ago and showing you how it's affecting us today, how these same things are happening because history matters, people. As much as this administration is trying to wipe out history so that we don't remember, it matters. Keep digging and keep looking at history because things repeat and the echoes, echoes, echoes are coming back. They're coming back strong. But Doc, I want you to also think about this. Um, Military families. Can you imagine serving your country in uniform, risking your life, and being willing to die for America? And then imagine the same government you served starts targeting your spouse for deportation,
yep.
separating you from your family, calling your wife a criminal. You don't have to imagine it. It's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Up to 80,000 undocumented spouses or parents of military members are living in the US. 80,000. We know there are 6,600 non-citizen parents of US citizen children detained in the last 9 months alone. Now that's just the rate, yeah, everybody. No reliable statistics exist on how many service members marry citizens of other countries, but experts say it's not uncommon given deployment to over 120 countries. These people are real families, Sergeant Isaac Correa, I think is how he pronounces it. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. His wife, Shirley, was arrested in March of 13th, 2025 at her workplace in Houston by ICE agents using deceptive tactics. They claimed to be DPS officers saying her car was in an accident. Shirley came to the US 10 plus years ago. She had a work permit and an ICE supervision order and regular check-ins. She applied for military parole in place. She was denied by the USCIS despite having zero criminal record. They told her to file with ICE instead, where it sat unanswered for over a year. And then on May 30th of 2025, her 28th birthday, she was deported to Honduras after nearly 3 months in detention. She was separated from her 10-month-old son and her active duty husband, and she is now her husband's now considering leaving the military. He has asked for a transfer to Honduras, but if it isn't approved, he's leaving. Another Marine veteran, Adrian Kalu, I sorry about the names, guys, and his wife was arrested in May of 2025 during what was supposed to be a routine immigration check-in. Paulo was brought to the US at the age of 14 by her asylum-seeking mother, who later abandoned her. She was 14 years old and her mother took off. She's in a new country. There was a 2018 deportation order was issued while she was homeless minor in CPS's care. She didn't have knowledge of the order. She had just had her second child, a newborn daughter. She was taken while breastfeeding. She's now detained in a Louisiana facility. Her Marine veteran husband drives their children 8 hours a week so they can visit their mother. Coast Guardsman's wife from Argentina was arrested in May of 2025. Her immigration status was flagged during routine security screening while moving into a Navy base, housing in South Florida. An Army lieutenant's wife from Australia, we've talked about that case. She was detained in May of 2025 at the Hawaii airport during a visit to see her husband, sent back to Australia. She was also a police officer. Alejandro Juarez, Marine combat veteran's wife, was first deported during the first Trump administration to Mexico, brought back in 2021 under Biden, humanitarian parole after lawmaker intervention. Her parole expired in June of 2025, and she was given a grace period of July 4th to celebrate her daughter's 16th birthday. After that, she had to leave. She crossed as a teenager and unknowingly signed a document that permanently prevented her from obtaining legal status. Why would she do that? Because they like to use language that people don't understand or can't read. They tell them lies about what they are signing, and this is what is happening. And then people are in the positions they're in. Her husband, Timo Juarez, is a decorated Marine veteran. They have two daughters. The military parole in place problem. There's supposed to be a program to help military and veteran family members temporarily stay in the U.S. legally while pursuing their permanent status here. It was created after Geraldo Ramirez case in 2007 when DHS tried to deport the wife of Staff Sergeant Alex Hernandez while he was missing in action in Iraq. National attention led to a reversal. She was granted a green card in July of 2007. Her husband's remains were found almost a year later. That case led to the creation of military parole in place. But here's the reality in 2025. There's no guaranteed protection. Approval is discretionary, complicated application process. Coast Guard has discontinued or paused the legal assistance to families seeking to apply. The USCIS can deny applications and redirect families to ICE, which doesn't have a program to give parole in place. Certain disqualifying factors could be a criminal record or expedited deportation orders. Individual field office chiefs have discretion over policy implementation. What this means, you recruit the service member, you retain the family. That's what the military is saying. But families don't feel like they belong anymore. Service members are afraid to enroll their families for benefits, losing focus on their missions due to family concerns, considering leaving the military if they can't keep families together, scrambling to get paperwork as enforcement ramps up political opinion versus the reality. And listen to this. Pew Research Center polling shows only 5% of Americans believe spouses of American citizens should be deported. Only 5%, but it's happening anyway. To people who serve, to people who risk their lives, to people who are willing to die for this country. Fathers in California that had 3 Marine sons, he was taken by ICE. So this is happening, and it's all because of color. So we have state-sanctioned racial categorizations from the 1920s. Alice Jones's race became a matter for the court because society viewed non-disclosure of colored blood as fraud. Census takers arbitrarily changed their racial designations from white to Negro based on visual assessment. In 2020, ICE agents used appearance, language, accent, location, and occupation to decide who to stop and detain. They misclassify immigrants' races. They ignore tribal IDs. They deport people with valid work permits. They even deport military spouses. Same principle. External authorities decide their racial category or immigration status, and that category determines your rights. The one drop rule lives on. Any trace of Black ancestry can invalidate a marriage, strip away the social standing, and deny property rights. Now we're looking at Latino speaking Spanish or working a specific job can get you detained, questioned, separated from your family, and deported if you're a US citizen. Even if you're married to someone serving in the military. The Rhinelander family feared that if Alice had children, those mixed race heirs would have access to property, real estate, wealth, and status. So they sought to annul the marriage. Now we have mixed status families face the same threat, legal separation based on racial categorization or immigration status. We have a governor of one state, Mike Braun, who's made the comment that he thinks interracial marriage should be handled by the states. What does that mean, Mike? He tried to backpedal saying, oh, well, he wasn't racist. Well, yeah, you kind of sound that way. And when people tell you what they are, I tend to believe them. ICE has detained and deported American children. Children born to immigrant parents, even US citizens, face family separation. At least 21 people in just one raid were separated from their children, including 3 kids under the age of 2. Military families are being torn apart, service members' sacrifices. An 11-year boy can't see his mother because his godmother is the White House spokesman, calling her a criminal in the theater of humiliation. Alice was stripped in court to prove her race, though bodily examination, reducing her humanity to skin color. Now, ICE agents in mask and tactical gear are kicking down bathroom doors and ordering women to pull up their pants. Arrests are captured on cameras with ICE agents practically stripping women as they're trying to control them. Public spectacles designed to intimidate. Bruna Ferreira was publicly stripped of her character on national television by her son's godmother. Military spouses arrested at routine check-ins were told they passed. The location changed from the courtroom to the street, the bathroom, the White House briefing room. The method changed from forced disrobing to bathroom invasions to character assassinations. There have been those that have even gone in and asked women to show them their breasts because they thought they were transgendered men going into a women's bathroom. This is facts. But the dehumanization remains. The economic and political dimensions. They're protecting 100 million in Manhattan real estate for mixed race family members. ICE is now targeting low-wage workers and forcing a radicalized labor system. The Levitt family was using political power to remove the mother of their own blood. Fear of retaliation prevents workers from organizing and inserting rights. Immigration enforcement maintains exploitable labor pools. Political convenience determines who gets destroyed, silencing the victims. Like Alice was silenced. She wasn't able to tell her story. And that's what they're doing with these people they pick up, and they play roulette with their lives by transferring them all over the country. The settlement forbid her from using even her last name. She couldn't lecture or write. She couldn't tell her side publicly. She died at 90, having never remarried and never spoken out. Today, silencing is families too afraid to report crimes, workers too afraid to report wage theft, children are too afraid to go to school, people are too afraid to speak Spanish, communities are terrorized into silence. Bruna was told to self-deport and stay quiet. Military families are afraid to seek benefits they've earned. This is what silence's betrayal is about. And this is what it means. The system depends on terrorizing people into silence. And we can't let that happen, you guys. So, whether it's forcing someone to disrobe in a courtroom or having mass agents snatch people off the street, using your political position to destroy your nephew's mother, or deporting the spouse of someone serving in uniform, the goal is the same: reduce human beings to their perceived racial category or immigration status. Race isn't biological, it's a social construct. It's a construct with real violent consequences. The Rhinelander trial proved that a century ago, America was willing to destroy a marriage, humiliate a woman in court, and uphold a racist social order, protect wealth and racial parity at any cost. Today's ICE raids, racial profiling, family separation, political persecution of immigrant mothers, the targeting of military families prove that we're still using the same playbook with different terminology. The myth of progress, we like to think we've progressed. We point to Loving versus Virginia, 1967, which struck down laws banning interracial marriage. We cite the Civil Rights Act. We suggest the first black president. But the Rhinelander case, Bruna Ferrera's case, and modern ICE abuses show us that the tools of oppression get more sophisticated. The language can get updated, you guys. And it really comes down to who gets to decide who belongs, who gets to police bodies based on perceived race, who gets to separate families, who has the right to invade your privacy and dignity, who can use political power to destroy inconvenient people. For our community, why this matters, some of you might be thinking, I'm not an immigrant. This doesn't affect me. Wrong. Because when you allow government to racially profile based on appearance, kick down that bathroom door and detain citizens without cause, ignore a federal judge's order, terrorize a community, separate children from parents, deport military spouses, let political families weaponize ICE against mothers, we're all less free. We're all less safe. Because the same logic that says ICE can detain Native Americans on their own land, the same logic that says the White House can destroy Bruna at the same time her son watches, the same logic that says military service doesn't protect your family is the same logic that said Alice had to strip in court. It's the logic of white supremacy. It's the logic that says some bodies matter less. It's the logic that says power determines who belongs. And stop and ask yourself, when's it going to be you have brown eyes, not blue? I'm sorry. You have to go over there. You can't be here. Oh, Pammy, I'm glad it brings it into more focus because that's what we want to do. We want to connect the legal part, but we want to connect it to what is happening today and how it does affect us, how it will continue to affect us. Because once you open the door for this, once you show them that they can get away with it, the more will continue to happen. So we have to document everything. And then we see people recording the ICE encounters, sharing the videos and the stories. Don't turn away when you see them. Watch them. Submit reports to organizations like the ACLU, the Black Alliance, or just immigration and Native American rights. Fun too. Know your rights. You have the right to remain silent. You don't have to open your door without a warrant signed by a judge. You have the right to ask if you're being detained. You have the right to an attorney. We have to support the organizations that fight back. You have to think of the people that are being abused because one day it might be you because maybe your social standing isn't what it should be. Maybe you go to the wrong church. You don't worship the way the people in power think you should. These are all things to think about because one day it could be us. We have to demand accountability. Demand ICE collect and publish racial data. Demand oversight and accountability. Support sanctuary policies. Demand protection for military families. What's going to happen if all these military people leave? Something to think about. Break the silence, share the stories, talk to your communities, and don't let this be normalized. Don't let it be just another story I'm seeing. For the Native communities specifically, carry multiple forms of ID. For those that have relatives that might be living on the street, make sure they have ID. Contact your tribal government if stopped. Report all encounters. Stay connected to tribal resources and updates. For military families, know that only 5% of Americans support deporting military spouses. Seeking legal help from immigration attorneys specializing in military cases. Contact the advocacy organizations. Know your rights. For all of us, Alice couldn't tell her story. She was legally silenced. She died never having shared her side publicly. Bruna is being told to stay silent, to self-deport, to accept her destruction. Military spouses are silenced by fear, but we can tell their stories. We must tell the stories. When ICE agents kick down the bathroom doors, we talk about it. When Native Americans are detained on their own land, we talk about it. When families are separated, we talk about it. When the government uses racial profiling, we talk about it. When political families weaponize ICE, we talk about it. And military spouses are deported, we talk about it. Because every system of violence depends on our silence. Let's get to our missing people. And that's another thing, you guys, with the missing people. Anyone that goes missing these days, it's sad to say you need to check with ICE. Not that they'll be truthful with you, but that has to be an option. We just don't know who they're detaining. So stay alert when you're out and about. If you see somebody that's on one of these posters, please call. Please call. I witnessed on a post or today. It said, "Oh, this person was seen, a day ago." Well, a day ago you should have called the police. And then someone said, "Well, they're an adult." If they've been reported missing, especially a native or indigenous person or a minority, it's hard to get the police to take these reports sometimes. So if they're listed as missing, there is a reason. Contact the police. Don't just think, "Well, they're an adult, it's okay." Stay aware of your surroundings, and let's make sure that we can bring someone home because they might leave voluntarily, but then they're in a position they can't come home, and that's what matters. We know trafficking happens. Um, exactly, Ken. You're building a record, and that's important. So trust your instincts, you guys. I trust you. If you notice something suspicious, make that call. And our first person that we have tonight is Isabel Ryland Breeding. She's only 15 years old. She's a 5'6", 263 pounds, brown hair and brown eyes. It breaks my heart to see someone this young, that's out there in this wicked world that we're living in right now. She's been missing since December 26th in Fargo, North Dakota. Let's get her found. If somebody knows where she's at, please contact the Fargo Police Department at 701-451-7660. Our next person is Jaden Benson. He's 17. Now, it gets a little confusing with Jaden because he has gone missing before and been found. So you might see reports that say he's been found. Make sure you check the date. Also, on one of the listings, they listed this boy as white. He is a Native American. See, here we go with the race thing. I'm sorry, but 1924 is back and it's mean. But he's 17 years old. He's been missing since November 26th from Rapid City, South Dakota. He weighs 155 pounds. He has brown hair, brown eyes. He has a tattoo on his right arm that says Natasha. The top of his hands are tattooed. I don't know what with. He has 3 scars on his neck. Please contact Rapid City Police Department at 605-394-4139. Um, his mother is also listed, and there are several phone numbers on the poster. We will have the information loaded. And you can always contact Lissa's Sanish Scouts at 701-893-6841. They're the ones that did this beautiful poster. Our next person is Key Ray Begay. He's 53. He's been missing since December 21st from Gallatin County, Montana. He's 5'9", 220 pounds. He has brown hair and brown eyes. Contact the sheriff's department up there at 406-582-2100. He last spoke to his wife on the 21st. Now, according to the sheriff's new release, they are concerned because when they pinged the phone, it showed him being near westbound Interstate 86 around miles post 28. He's driving a black 2014 Dodge Avenger. He's diabetic and does not have his medication. So it's very important he gets found because sometimes with diabetics, they can get disoriented. Let's get him found. Now we have Rihanna Messeth.
Mesteth.
Thank you, Doc. She's 17. She's been missing since December 10th from Omaha, Nebraska. Poor child. She's got brown hair and brown eyes, and she's 5'8" and 140 pounds. If you know Rihanna's whereabouts, contact Omaha Police Department at 402-444-5600. Or on all of these, you can always contact your local 911 if you see them. So from 1925 now, or 24 to 2025, from the courtroom in New York to a bathroom stall, factory floors, White House briefing rooms, military bases, and public streets across America, from Alice Beatrice Jones to Bruna Ferrer to military families to Native Americans, Black immigrants, Latino communities, and anyone deemed other by those in power. The thorough line is this: America's always used racial categorization and power to justify violence against bodies it deems other. We know her marriage got annulled. She was stripped in court. She was silenced for life. Bruna's character was stripped on national TV. She was separated from her child and told to disappear. Military families, spouses deported, despite service members' sacrifices. Families are torn apart. Children separated from parents. Indigenous people stripped of land, stripped of citizenship, granted it back, now questioned again while being stripped of dignity. They're being stripped of due process, separated from children, deported even with valid documents. Now they're going after Black immigrants. They're stripped of accurate data collection, facing higher rates of violence at every step. All people of color are subject to having armed agents determine their worth based on skin color, language and location, and occupation. The question we got to answer: the Rhinelander case was shocking even for the tumultuous roaring 20s. But what's happening now should be equally shocking. ICE agents following a woman into a bathroom, U.S. citizens detained on ancestral lands, babies being separated from parents. Don't kid yourself. There are still facilities with children that are being held. They're being separated. I'm going to be digging into that more. And people are being deported despite valid documentation. Mass agents are terrorizing communities, pointing guns at people. I mean, this is ridiculous. Military spouses, you expect these people to protect you when you're treating them like this and their families? I'd be thinking that one over. Are we shocked or are we numb? Are we silent or are we speaking? Let's remember Alice. Tell her story. There's someone that wants to do, actually, I think they're going to try and write a play about her story. But we know the story now. We learned it. We recognize the pattern. She won her case, but she lost everything. Bruna won her case. The judge saw through the lies. He set a minimum bond and the government waived the appeal. But she's still fighting for her life, her son, and her dignity. Military families are losing, you guys. They're being separated and terrorized. Just think of that, a mother having her baby taken away while she's nursing. You say the children are so important, and yet you steal their. You said you were going after criminals. These are not criminals. Think about that. We're being lied to. Are we going to stand for it? But we have something Alice didn't have: the ability to amplify the story. We have social media. We have podcasts, we have platforms, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, Facebook. We have it all, and we have each other. So, my final thoughts: every killer and every racist depend on us being silent. They want us to give it to them. They want every system of oppression. They want us to be quiet. Don't give it to them. Stand up and make comments. Repost when you see tragedy like this. Repost this. Every instance of racial profiling, every bathroom invasion, every illegal detention, every family separated, every political persecution, every military spouse deported depends on our collective silence. We're not going to remain silent. We will tell Alice's story. We're going to tell Bruno's. We're going to tell the stories of military families being torn apart and the stories of the Native Americans being detained on their own land. We're going to tell the stories of women who were violated in bathrooms, were practically stripped in the street. We're going to tell the stories of families ripped apart because silence is betrayal. And justice demands we speak. I'm sorry we went really long, you guys. This has been Trial Junkies United presents Justice After Dark. I'm Z, your storyteller, here with Doc. Doc, say goodnight.
Say goodnight, Doc.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you for bearing witness to what is happening. Thank you for refusing to be silent. And remember, share. Share everything. Break the silence. We're going to see you on Thursday. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay vocal, keep fighting for justice. We love you guys. I know this was kind of a crazy start. We have another song for you at the end of this. Doc will fix things. He always does. And I love you all very much. So ciao. Good night.
Just hot and 24, and the music set us free. Speakeasies were jumping, dancing, wild as we could be. Black hands played the freedom songs at the same time. White folks lived the life. They called it the golden age, but golden for who and why? Golden age, they say, freedom in the air. But freedom's just a song if you can't breathe it there. They love the sound we made, our rhythm and our soul. Wouldn't let us through the door, drink from the same bowl. Golden chains, golden age, same cage, shinier stage. The Cotton Club was jumping with the best you ever heard, with Duke, Cab, and Bessie singing every freedom word. But black folks couldn't sit and listen to the songs that people made, perform for white-only crowds while black musicians were underpaid. Golden age, they say, freedom in the air. But freedom's just a song if you can't breathe it there. They love the sound we made, our rhythm and our soul. Wouldn't let us through the door, drink from the same bowl. Golden chains, golden age. Alice danced to that same jazz, fell in love across the line. Thought maybe music broke the walls, thought maybe love was blind. But they stripped her dignity, made her prove her skin in court. Jazz played on while justice fell. Love became a blood sport. 100 years have come and gone, the jazz still plays today. Listen closely beneath the notes, hear what they really say. Born from suffering and pain, from fighting for freedom. The golden age was golden for those who couldn't see. Golden age, they say, roaring 20 is bright, but roaring's hard when you can't speak, when you have no rights. They took our sound and sold it back, our culture turned to gold. 100 years and here we stand, same story being told. Golden chains, golden age. till we